Hello, and welcome to my show, Searching for Integrity. My name really is John Smith, and I'm searching for people with integrity. Why? Because our country suffers from IDD, Integrity Deficit Disorder. We have today a doctor that set the baby numbers in North Dakota, or was it at this all I was thinking it would all be the state fair. That's what I said. Nevertheless, and we're going to have you as our guest today. His name is Dr. Alan Lindemann, and I've been through his material that he's got, and it's superior. It is superior. Whoever's helped you with that did a good job.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Well, let me get started. We're going to probably give you the lead on this, and I'll ask some questions along the way. Have you always practiced in North Dakota?
Well, I started in Minneapolis and St. Paul. I had my residency at Regions Hospital, which is a University of Minnesota affiliated hospital. Right. And I also had 1 year of medical school there. So I lived in St. Paul and Minneapolis for 5 years, and that's where I started my obstetric career.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what was I guess it's probably a lot. Do you get chills on you when that baby pops out?
You know, it has never stopped being a miracle. Yeah. It's always been fun. And, there are times when, especially during labor, when your moms and dads think maybe they can't do it. But if you know who that person is, you can reach into their psyche for strength and for the calm that's needed to complete that job. And that is a really emotional, actually religious experience that there's really nothing more moving or meaningful than that.
Oh, I can see that. That's obvious to me. Geez, obvious. OB. We're got a book we're going to talk about today, and maybe others. The Pregnancy Your Way.
That's correct. That's the main title, and it's Choose a Safe and Happy Birth. And I'll just put it up here so everybody can see it. This is the first book we've had. That's why it's got that gray line across there. Yeah. I guess you can see it better now. Anyway, yes, it was a complicated book to write because we had two problems. One was, the book that we wanted to write because of the message that it was important to bring. But the other one was what we needed to write in order to make it appealing to the audience, or at least tolerable. So, this book is designed to bridge the gap between where we are now in pregnancy and where we would like to be. For example, we are the only nation in the world with an increasing maternal mortality rate. We have, in the year of 2021, our average rate, it's based on number of live births per 100,000. So it went up to about 30. If you're looking at Native Americans and Native Alaskans, it went up to about 40. And if you're looking at women of color, it went up to 69.9 per 100,000. And that's from about 45. So we're going rapidly in the wrong direction. to put that into perspective, if you look at countries like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Japan, you're looking at a maternal mortality rate of about 2 per 100,000. So that raises the question, what are we doing differently from what they're doing in the Scandinavian countries and in Japan? So I think what we're doing is access. In other words, we have people here in this country who can't afford health care. So rather than going to their prenatal visits, they're busy working. They don't have time to go, and they don't have time to get their blood pressure checked. They don't have time to form a relationship with a doctor. So that's one of the problems we have with access. But we also have all of our payers are inclined, or they desire to control the cost of healthcare by denying access. So your OB visits are limited. The amount of tests you can order are limited. The amount of ultrasounds are limited. So we do limit healthcare and we do limit access. And I think that's the difference between a maternal mortality rate of 69.9 per 100,000 versus 2 per 100,000. Those places have access, and it's unlimited, and it's for an entire year.
Well, that's an amazing statistic. Is there one or two situations you found that it might send things to get in your way? Whether they be, go ahead.
Yes. If you look at how this develops, if we look at who dies as a result of childbirth, our most rapidly growing group and our number one group is a group that shouldn't exist at all. And it is what we call behavioral health. And that is suicides, homicides, and drug overdose. When I was busy 20, 30, and 40 years ago, we didn't have those things. But if you dig down in that group, it's the Caucasian moms who are highly educated who suicide. And you wonder, well, why? Why are they doing that? Well, I think even women who don't have children who are highly educated seem to understand that the problem is life is very different after the birth of the child. And the thing that you need to do, that it requires adjustment. In other words, you have to say to yourself, my life is never going to be the same, but it's going to be better. And that's the hallmark of a successful postpartum birth. But if you lament the fact that life you knew is gone, then you run into trouble. So that's that group. And if you look at the homicide group, that is usually it's 60% weapons, firearms. And the largest group there is drug overdose, and that's about 50% of that group. So that's where they come from. Most people are turned off by listening to these statistics. So if you think your audience is getting turned off by this, we can change the topic. But I can talk about these things for a long time.
Well, it sounds like it. Do you have the, let's look in times of a class, like the class of 20 and the class of 10 and the class of 00. Are any of these, as time goes by, that you can tell that people are more interested in finding out in their own education and what's going to happen?
Well, it's hard to say. I think that right now there seems to be a tremendous outcry for the problems we're having in healthcare in general. For example, we have the most expensive healthcare on the planet, but obstetrics isn't the only area that's struggling. So I think that all of a sudden we have people who have recognized the problem, but they don't know at all what to do about it. But I think until this time, the American public has pretty much been indifferent to what's happening. Because if you look at most moms, if you still even take the average mom, and this is a reasonable thing, because 90% of moms have no trouble with pregnancy and no trouble with delivery. They go home, they have healthy, happy babies. So they don't want to hear about this other stuff. So it's hard to educate. That's one of the problems we had in our book, because we're trying to steer moms away from the bad outcomes in the book, but not make it so heavy that they don't want to read it. So yes, I think that we now all of a sudden have an interest in having better outcomes for our families, for our patients, for what happens to moms and dads and babies when they go home.
It sounds like a tightrope in a sense.
It is, and it's the tightrope that we had to decide to walk for our book. Like I said, I didn't want to turn off people, because most moms, like I said, most of the dads won't have trouble. But, if you look at these moms and dads who do have trouble, they're really the canary in the coal mine, and they are rather insensitive canary at that. In other words, and this is according to the CDC, for every death, you have 20 to 30 near deaths. And of course, the CDC doesn't define what a near death is. But I'd be willing to bet that for every one of those near deaths, you have some other kind of problem, and which we can talk about if you want to. And if you want to do something else, we can do that too.
Well, if it's important, maybe we could take a short run at it.
Okay, let's do that. I want to talk a little bit about somebody who we wouldn't expect to have trouble postpartum. And this lady was on NPR. And I haven't seen her, so she's not my patient. And she's already public, so I'm not breaking any medical rules or laws of privacy. Name is Lindsay. She's an OB nurse, 32 years old. She had 3 children, a girl 5, a girl 3, and a boy 7 months. She knew she was in some kind of trouble and began seeking medical care in October. She went October, November, December, and January. She admitted herself to the hospital twice. She had seen several psychiatrists and been on 12 different medications for depression. The last time she hospitalized herself was January 5th. And on January 21st, she strangled all 3 of her children and jumped out the roof of her house in order to commit suicide. Well, she didn't commit suicide. Now, there's all kinds of problems with this, because she asked for care and she didn't get it. And she had what we call a postpartum psychosis, which is a very dangerous condition. She'd actually heard voices telling her to kill her children, and she told people about this. So everybody who heard that is kind of responsible for the outcome, because she was asking for help. So now, rather than help, we're busy prosecuting her, which is all backwards. But this is the thing that one of the reasons we wrote the book, because if you look at our mission, our first mission, it's to promote pregnancy-related health, wellness for moms, dads, and babies. And that actually can be done. And that's kind of the good news portion of our book. That is, we can take a potentially complicated situation, but if we see that person every time, And one of the things I've always done, I see moms, dads, and the children. So I get to know who is involved and I get to know their context. I get to know their weaknesses and their strengths. And I can work with that to help them have a better postpartum. Another thing that used to help, when I was a resident and, 20 years ago, we could keep moms and babies in the hospital after they delivered for as many days as we needed to. The question we always had in the morning was, is this patient ready to go home? Is the baby ready to go home? Is the milk in? Does the baby know how to eat? Can the baby latch on? Does the mother know how to get the baby to latch on? So all these questions were answered before the moms and dads and babies went home. So we didn't see a lot of what we now call failure to thrive. But if you look at babies who are diagnosed with failure to thrive and come in 6 months later, the babies that are C-section babies come in half as often as the babies who are vaginal births. And I think the reason for that is that the C-section moms stay longer in the hospital and they're more ready to go home. It's a simple thing, but it's one of the things that insurance companies just trashed.
Really?
It was part of healthcare that was important. They didn't understand it and they just trashed it. And this is not just any insurance company, it's every insurance company. It includes our federal government, CMS, Medicaid, Medicare, whatever they're on,
Right.
They get sent home before they're ready to go. And that's another thing. So we have some stories in the book about how do you do a good postpartum? And that needs to be established before moms and dads go home. Little
Right.
things like who's going to do the dishes, who's going to clean the bathroom, who's going to wash the floor, who's going to clean the breast pump. All of those things need to be decided. You don't need a dad who goes out and gets a 12-pack of beer and plays video games. They need to be participating in the program.
Right. Right. Well, there's a lot of education involved in terms of what you just described for the husband. They need to work.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I always had my husbands they were always welcome. And as a matter of fact, I really wanted them to come in and they were told that I wanted them to come in. So yeah, husbands can be really helpful postpartum. And I think if Lindsay's husband had been a little bit more tuned in, the outcome would have been much different. Now, I'm not blaming husbands, I'm blaming a system that doesn't educate husbands.
Right. Right. And that's serious.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much. What type of okay, they say got a man, got a woman, maybe other children. Uh, what do they do beginning in the beginning, postpartum?
You mean how should they behave? What's a good the
Yes.
beginning of a good outcome?
Yes.
Well, I think it would be wonderful if we could have a nice maternity leave for every mom,
Right.
at least 3 months. And in most countries, dads have paternity leave. So that's the beginning. The next step would be that, say, for example, mom needs to sleep sometime. Because if you don't sleep, you get crazy. But so somebody needs to figure out, well, how is this feeding going to work? Because sometimes when you get a new baby home, they want to eat every 3 hours. Sometimes if they're really little, they want to eat every 2 hours. And if you're lucky, they'll eat every 4 hours. But I would recommend, if possible, for dad to take at least one nighttime feeding and one of the daytime feedings. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that idea because you got the Leche League, the Milk League, who says, oh, if you bottle feed, that'll wreck your breastfeeding. I've never found that to be true. As a matter of fact, what I have found to be true is that babies must eat. And,
Right.
They should gain a couple ounces a day. A good rule of thumb is very simple. At 6 months, they should be twice their birth weight. At a year, they should be 3 times their birth weight. So, a couple ounces a day. Baby scales used to be popular. Today, I think they're probably less popular, but still, the idea is that you need to know how much your child is eating. A good thumbnail description would be if the baby cries, they get fed, they go to sleep, they sleep for a few hours, they wake up again and they eat. That's probably an indication that baby is getting enough food. And of course, babies are kind of fat. They should have a fat face and a little fat belly, a little fat on their hands and some on their feet. But I think what I'd like to see is a nurse come to the house every day to see how moms work. Now, if you look at the studies that talk about those things, the studies say, oh, moms don't like that. Well, I think you have to look at how it's done. In other words, if you come in there with your pencil and your paper or your computer, and you have a bunch of buttons you have to click, and you're not paying attention to the mother, you're not really understanding what is working and what isn't working, how the mother feels, how the father feels. If you're going to try to fill all those blanks in, you're not listening. And that's what people pick up on, is if somebody comes into the house, they pretend to be listening, but they're not. And people pick up on that. I think if you had somebody come into the house and actually listened and actually gave advice, like you can't be feeding this baby every 2 hours through the night, and you can't get up at 5 o'clock to do your whatever your meditation, you need to sleep. You need to have some kind of sense in your life, some kind of ordinary things. So I think that would be a good idea to help moms and dads be on the right track. There are dads who think that, I'm not going to fix supper, I'm not going to fix dinner, I'm not going to fix breakfast. That's not a good idea. You're in this together. You started it together. You're in it together for the long haul. And so people need to understand that and work together.
My first marriage, I had twin sons, identical. By the way, Mac also has twin daughters. And they didn't come home for like 3 months. They wouldn't let us have them. And that was because they were weighed, 310 and 4 ounces. So combined would be a healthy baby, one baby.
Yep.
And instead, you got we can't hug them, we can't touch them. It's just like, very, very frustrating, but you have to wait.
Today I think things are a little bit easier. I mean, we recognize the need to touch, that moms and dads need to actually feel the baby, and that the babies need to feel moms and dads touch. They'll recognize your voice. As a matter of fact, I think I've had many moms say, oh, the baby recognizes your voice. And I think it was from the prenatal visits. They could hear through the mother's abdomen. So yeah, parental touch is really important. And yeah, twins is kind of a hard way to start out, especially when they're little, and you're talking about babies that want to eat every 2 hours, and you got 2 of them.
Yeah. That's not funny. I'm laughing, but that's not funny.
No, it isn't. I do have another little story. I had one patient who had quads. And
Oh
so,
boy.
just imagine 4 little babies. Well, they eventually came home, 2, 1, and 1, like that. And Dad was pretty much the caretaker. He said, as a matter of fact, we did a video of the family when all 4 of the children got to be 21, and we went to see them, did a video. So we do have a free video on our website about that. But Dad said he changed 7,000 diapers a month.
Oh,
So that's heroic.
yeah. Whoa, that is heroic. Um, by the way, we just added another grandchild to the family 8 weeks ago.
Well, congratulations. How many do you have?
Well, one at this time. One. It was the one of that daughter. She has 3 kids now, and I don't know why she wanted to have a third one. I don't know. We don't discuss these things with her because she rules. Okay.
Yeah, I know. No, I have 4 grandchildren. I'd like to have more, but I can tell you that that is not a conversation I have with my children.
Right. Right.
It's
Well, my
their business.
twins. Yeah, my twins each delivered a son and a daughter, and both the twins. I thought, well, they do everything. They always do everything alike. So that's one of the things as well. Uh, let me ask you something else. And we talked about this earlier. Is that people that need to find your book and want to find your book? Where do you steer them to? Where do you
Well,
point them?
it's Amazon and
Hmm?
it's Pregnancy Your Way Lindemann. And it has to have the Lindemann on it, or you'll get about 20 other pregnancies your way. So it's Pregnancy Your Way Lindemann at Amazon.
Okay, that's probably the best way to get it done. And if they send you the wrong book, you can always send it back to Amazon. You know?
Yes.
Now, last question. Over your left shoulder, you've got a modern medicine book there. A little
That
bit about it.
Yes, thank you for asking. This is how my wife and I met. We did this book starting in 1990, and it was designed to warn or to tell consumers about the um, problems that we saw with medical care. For example, the problems of denied access, the when you start emphasizing money over patients, profit over patients, the kinds of sour outcomes you get when you do those things. So this is kind of a call, but of course, the book was ahead of its time. We didn't sell more than about 2,000 of them because at the time, you could buy an insurance policy for $300 a month. Of course, now it's more like 3,000. People pay more for health insurance than they pay for their house payment. So we saw this coming,
Right.
but it didn't do any good to write the book.
Well, I want to thank you to come in here, Dr. Allen. It's been quite a quite a 30 minutes. It's every bit of it. It is. There's so much that you have, and I keep thinking about 6,000 in the state fair. It's just um,
It's been fun, and thank you.
well, it's my pleasure. I'm grateful that you had the time for it, and we did turn it out there coming down the stretch. We can, and
Well,
that's always good.
I do appreciate it so much, and thank you for the invitation. It's been fun.
It has been. I want to thank my listeners that tuned in, and hopefully the ones that came in and listened. they're going to make use of that. Searching for integrity is also something for people to tune into and to say goodbye. It's a different way. And you'll know about this. So long and happy trails to all. Until we meet again.